Everyone at the engagement party was celebrating a perfect love story, but the quiet waitress standing nearby was the only person who knew it was all a lie. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below, and if you believe truth and loyalty matter more than power, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Amelia Brooks. The Black Orchid restaurant had never looked more beautiful. Crystal chandeliers reflected across the polished marble floors. Elegant flowers decorated every table. Soft music filled the air as powerful guests gathered for one of the most important nights in the city. The engagement celebration of Alexander Carter, the Korean Mafia Boss, a man whose name carried influence far beyond the walls of the restaurant. His yellow-toned skin, tattoos across his neck and body, and cold expression reminded everyone of the power he carried. People respected him. People feared him. But tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was not about business. Tonight was about love. At his side stood Victoria Hayes. Beautiful. Elegant. The woman everyone believed would become his wife. She smiled perfectly for every camera. She held Alexander's hand. She accepted congratulations from wealthy guests. To everyone watching, they looked like the perfect couple. But one person saw something nobody else noticed. Amelia Brooks, a black waitress working quietly among the guests. To most people, Amelia was invisible. She carried plates, refilled glasses, moved between conversations without interrupting. Nobody expected her to understand the world of powerful people. Nobody expected her to notice what happened behind expensive smiles. But Amelia had always been observant. She noticed the small things, the details people ignored, the changes in someone's expression, the hesitation before someone spoke, the difference between a genuine smile and a fake one. And that night, something felt wrong. While serving drinks near Alexander's table, Amelia noticed Victoria step away from the celebration. Not for a phone call, not for a private moment. Something else. A man Amelia had never seen before approached her. Their conversation was quiet, but their body language revealed enough. Victoria looked around carefully before handing him something small. A document, a phone, a piece of information. Something she did not want Alexander to see. Amelia froze for a moment, because she understood what she was witnessing. Betrayal. The woman everyone trusted was hiding something. The woman standing beside the most powerful man in the room was secretly working against him. Amelia looked toward Alexander. He was smiling, talking with guests, completely unaware. And for a moment, she hesitated, because she knew the truth could be dangerous. In Alexander Carter's world, secrets had consequences. People who interfered with powerful people often paid a price. And Amelia was just a waitress. She had no influence, no protection, no reason to involve herself. But then she remembered something. Doing nothing was also a choice. She watched Alexander laugh with the people around him. A man who had no idea the person closest to him was preparing to betray him. And Amelia made her decision. She would tell him, not because she wanted a reward, not because she wanted attention, but because someone needed to know the truth. The only question was, how could a black waitress warn a Korean mafia boss about the woman he planned to marry without putting herself in danger? And that night, a small piece of paper would become the beginning of everything. The small piece of paper in Amelia Brooks' hand carried a warning that could destroy everything Alexander Carter believed was real. Because sometimes the most dangerous betrayal does not come from an enemy. It comes from the person standing closest to you. The engagement celebration continued around them. Guests laughed. Champagne glasses touched. Music filled the elegant halls of Black Orchid restaurant. Everyone saw a beautiful evening. Everyone saw a perfect couple. But Amelia saw something else. A secret. A plan. A betrayal waiting to happen. She stood near the service area, watching carefully. For years, Amelia had learned how to observe without being noticed. As a black waitress, people often ignored her presence. They spoke freely around her. They revealed things they would never say if they believed someone important was listening. And that night, their mistake was assuming Amelia was not important. She watched Victoria Hayes return to Alexander's side with the same perfect smile. The same smile everyone trusted. The same smile hiding something darker. Alexander Carter looked happier than Amelia had ever seen him. The Korean Mafia boss who made entire rooms silent was laughing. Relaxed. Unaware. His yellow-toned skin, tattoos across his neck and body, and powerful presence made him appear untouchable. But Amelia noticed something. Even powerful people could be hurt. Even feared men could be betrayed. She looked down at the information she had discovered. The meeting, the hidden conversation, the people waiting outside the restaurant. Everything pointed to one conclusion. Victoria was not preparing for a wedding. She was preparing for something else. Amelia's hands tightened, because she understood the danger. If she was wrong, she could lose everything. Her job, her security, her place in the only world she knew. And if she was right, she was stepping into a conflict far beyond her position. Alexander Carter was not an ordinary man. People who challenged him did not simply walk away. Amelia looked toward him again. He was listening to Victoria talk about their future. He believed every word. That was the hardest part. The person she needed to warn was the person least likely to believe her. A waitress, warning a mafia boss about his own fiancée. It sounded impossible, but Amelia remembered something her grandmother once told her. The truth does not become less important because people refuse to hear it. And that was when she made her choice. She walked toward Alexander's table. Slowly, carefully, she waited until no one was watching. Then, as she placed a fresh glass beside him, she slipped a small folded piece of paper into his hand. Alexander looked down. For a moment, he thought it was part of the service. Then he noticed Amelia's expression. Serious, concerned, different. He opened the paper. Only one sentence was written inside. Your fiancé has betrayed you. They're already in position. The world around. Alexander seemed to slow down. The music continued. The guests continued celebrating. But his attention was no longer on the party. His eyes moved from the paper to Amelia, the waitress standing in front of him. The woman nobody noticed. The woman who had just risked everything to warn him. Alexander said nothing, but his expression changed. Because for the first time that night, he wondered if the person everyone overlooked was the only person telling him the truth. The message on the small piece of paper was only one sentence. But for Alexander Carter, it changed everything. Your fiancé has betrayed you. They're already in position. The words stayed in his mind long after he read them. Because Alexander Carter was not a man who feared enemies. He expected enemies. He prepared for enemies. But betrayal from someone he loved? That was different. The engagement party continued around him. Guests smiled. Music played. Victoria stood beside him, unaware that everything had changed. Or perhaps, she knew exactly what was happening. Alexander slowly folded the paper and placed it inside his jacket. His expression remained calm. Years of experience had taught him one important lesson. Never reveal what you know, especially when you do not know who is watching. His eyes moved across the room. The guests, the security team, the employees, and finally, Amelia Brooks, the black waitress who had just risked everything to warn him. For a moment, Alexander wondered, why her? Why would someone with nothing to gain involve herself in his problems? People usually approached him because they wanted something. Money, protection, influence. But Amelia had done the opposite. She had stepped into danger without asking for anything. That made her warning harder to ignore. Later that night, after the celebration ended, Alexander returned to his private office. The city lights reflected against the windows. Marcus Reed entered the room. You look concerned. Alexander placed the folded paper on the desk. Read it. Marcus opened it. His expression changed immediately. Victoria? Alexander said nothing, because he knew suspicion was not proof. And Alexander Carter never made decisions based only on emotion. Find out everything. Marcus nodded. Within hours, the investigation began. Messages, financial records, private meetings. Every small detail was examined. At first, nothing appeared unusual. Victoria had always been careful, elegant, controlled, the perfect fiancée. But then small cracks began appearing. A meeting she never mentioned. A conversation she tried to hide. People around her who suddenly gained access to information they should not have known. The truth was slowly coming together. And the most disturbing part was not the betrayal itself. It was how close it had been. Alexander sat alone in his office, looking at the evidence. The woman he trusted most had been standing beside him while planning against him. But there was another thought he could not ignore. Amelia, the waitress who saw everything before anyone else. The woman nobody considered important. The person everyone overlooked. Yet she was the only one brave enough to tell him the truth. The next evening, Alexander returned to Black Orchid Restaurant. Amelia was working as usual, serving guests, carrying plates, moving quietly through the room, as if nothing had happened. Alexander approached her. Why did you warn me? Amelia looked at him. She knew exactly what he meant. I saw something wrong. That is all. She nodded. That is enough. Alexander studied her. You knew who I was. A pause. You knew what could happen if you were wrong. Amelia looked calm. I knew. Then why? Her answer was simple. Because someone needed to know the truth. The room around them continued moving. But for Alexander, everything became quiet. Because he finally understood something. The person with the least power in the room was the only person who used it for the right reason. Not for advantage. Not for reward. But because it was the right thing to do. And for the first time, Alexander Carter questioned whether the person he trusted least was actually the person he should trust most. The truth about Victoria Hayes was slowly becoming impossible to ignore. But for Alexander Carter, the hardest part was not discovering the betrayal. It was accepting who was behind it. Because the person he trusted most was the person who had been hiding the most. Inside his private office, Alexander studied every piece of information Marcus Reed had collected. Messages, financial records, secret meetings. Small details that once seemed meaningless now revealed a much darker picture. Victoria had planned everything carefully. She had built a perfect image. The loving fiancée, the loyal partner, the woman who stood beside him when the entire world watched. But behind that image was someone preparing to take advantage of his trust. Alexander leaned back in his chair. For years, he believed he was impossible to deceive. He had survived because he noticed everything. Every movement. Every hesitation, every hidden intention. But Victoria proved something different. Sometimes the person closest to you is the person you stop questioning. And that was the mistake. Meanwhile, Amelia Brooks continued working at Black Orchid Restaurant. She did not ask what happened. She did not demand to know if Alexander believed her. She simply returned to her normal routine. Serving guests, cleaning tables, moving quietly through a world where people rarely noticed her. But Alexander noticed. For the first time, he saw what others ignored. The way Amelia treated everyone with respect. The way she helped employees without expecting anything. The way she carried herself with confidence despite having no powerful title. She had every reason to stay silent that night. She had every reason to protect herself. Yet she chose to warn him. That decision stayed in his mind. One evening, Alexander returned to the restaurant. He found Amelia organizing the tables after closing. The room was quiet. The same place where she had slipped the warning into his hand. The same place where everything changed. Amelia. She turned around. Mr. Carter. Alexander looked at her for a moment. I know about Victoria. Amelia remained silent. She did not celebrate. She did not say she was right. She simply nodded. That surprised him. Most people wanted recognition after proving someone wrong. They wanted to hear that they were smarter. But Amelia wanted nothing. Why didn't you ask for anything? Alexander finally asked. Amelia looked confused. What do you mean? You helped me. A pause. You could have used that. She looked at him calmly. I wasn't trying to gain something. Then why? Her answer was simple. Because you deserved to know the truth. Those words affected him. Because Alexander understood the difference. Many people around him were loyal because they benefited from his power. Amelia was loyal because she believed honesty mattered. That was rare. Very rare. You understand what could have happened if you were wrong. Alexander asked. Amelia nodded. Yes. And you still did it? Another quiet moment passed. Yes. Alexander looked at her differently. Not as an employee. Not as someone beneath him. But as someone with a strength he could not measure. Later that night, Alexander stood outside the restaurant. The city lights reflected across the streets. He thought about the people who surrounded him. The powerful. The wealthy. The connected. And then he thought about Amelia. The one person who had nothing to gain. The one person who told him the truth. The one person who proved loyalty was not always found where power existed. Sometimes, it was found in the person everyone overlooked. The truth was finally revealed. But for Alexander Carter, discovering Victoria's betrayal was only the beginning. Because the hardest part of losing trust was learning who deserved it from the start. For years, Alexander had surrounded himself with powerful people. Business partners. Influential families. Those who understood his world. Those who knew how to survive around him. But none of them had done what Amelia Brooks did. She had nothing to gain. Nothing to prove. Yet she stepped forward when everyone else remained silent. That realization changed the way Alexander saw her. The black waitress who once blended into the background had become the person he trusted most. And that was something Alexander never expected. After Victoria's betrayal was confirmed, Alexander made a decision. He would not expose the truth through anger. He would not allow emotions to control him, because a lifetime of power had taught him one thing: the person who loses control loses the advantage. Instead, he waited. He gathered evidence. He watched. And he prepared. Meanwhile, Amelia continued her normal routine. She returned to serving customers at Black Orchid restaurant. She did not act like she had saved a powerful man's future. She did not expect special treatment. She did not walk differently because Alexander knew her value now. She was still Amelia, the same woman who believed doing the right thing mattered, even when nobody noticed. One evening, Alexander found her after closing. The restaurant was quiet. The bright lights had been dimmed. The same place where she had secretly placed the warning into his hand. "Do you ever regret helping me?" Alexander asked. Amelia looked surprised. "Why would I?" "Because you knew the risk." She was silent for a moment. Then she answered, "Doing the right thing is not always the safest choice." Those words stayed with him, because Alexander understood danger. He understood risk. But he had spent years believing people acted only for personal benefit. Amelia proved otherwise. "You could have walked away," Alexander said. "Yes. But you didn't." She looked at him calmly. "No." "Why?" Her answer was simple. "Because someone had to tell you." The room became quiet, and Alexander realized something important. Amelia did not see him as a mafia boss. She did not see the reputation, the influence, the fear. She saw a person who was about to be betrayed. And that was rare. Very rare. Later, Alexander stood with Marcus Reed outside the restaurant. "You trust her now?" Marcus said. Alexander looked toward the building. "Yes." Marcus nodded. "That is unusual." Alexander understood what he meant. Trust was not something he gave easily. In his world, trust had a price. Everyone had motives. Everyone wanted something. But Amelia had proven something different. Sometimes the person with the least power could have the strongest loyalty. Days later, Alexander watched Amelia help a new employee at the restaurant. She was patient, kind, understanding, the same qualities that made her step forward when everyone else stayed quiet. And for the first time, Alexander saw the difference between loyalty and obedience. People obeyed power, but they stayed loyal to character. The Korean Mafia Boss had spent years building an empire that people feared, but the person who earned his deepest respect was the woman who had no reason to stand beside him. The woman who had no title, no influence, no protection, only courage. And Alexander Carter finally understood. The person who protects the truth is often the person nobody thinks to watch. The truth was finally ready to come out. But Alexander Carter knew something important. Truth alone was not enough. Timing mattered. Because in his world, the wrong move could turn a secret into a disaster. For days, Alexander watched carefully. He watched Victoria. He watched the people around her. He watched every conversation, every movement, every hidden connection. The woman he once believed would stand beside him forever was slowly revealing who she really was. And the person who revealed the truth was the one person nobody expected: Amelia Brooks, a black waitress who had no position of power, no influence, no reason to be involved. Yet she had protected him when people with everything to gain chose silence. That changed the way Alexander saw loyalty. One evening, Alexander called Marcus Reed into his office. The room was quiet. The evidence was spread across the desk. Everything connects back to Victoria. Marcus looked at the documents. "Are you sure?" Alexander nodded. "Yes." A pause. "But I want the truth exposed completely." Marcus understood. Because Alexander was not looking for revenge. He was looking for certainty. For years, people believed the Korean Mafia Boss was dangerous because of his anger. But those who knew him understood something else. His greatest strength was patience. He could wait. He could observe. He could allow people to reveal themselves. Meanwhile, Victoria continued acting like nothing had changed. She smiled. She attended meetings. She played the role of the perfect fiancée. But Alexander saw through it now. The illusion was gone. One night, he invited Victoria to a private meeting. The room was silent. No guests. No cameras. No distractions. Only the truth waiting to be revealed. Victoria looked at him. Is something wrong? Alexander studied her. For years, he had searched for honesty in the people around him. But now he understood. Sometimes people showed you exactly who they were. You just had to stop ignoring the signs. I know what happened. The confidence in Victoria's expression disappeared for a moment. Only a moment. But Alexander noticed. That was enough. The evidence was presented. The hidden conversations. The secret plans. The betrayal. The woman who believed she could manipulate the man beside her realized the truth had already caught up with her. The room became silent. No excuses. No explanations. Only reality. Later that evening, Alexander returned to Black Orchid Restaurant. Amelia was finishing her shift. She looked surprised to see him. You handled it? Alexander nodded. Yes. She simply smiled. No celebration. No satisfaction. No feeling of victory. That surprised him. You don't want to know what happened? Amelia shook her head. That is your decision. Alexander looked at her. Most people would have wanted details. They would have wanted proof that they were right. But Amelia did not need that. Because she never helped him to be recognized. She helped him because it was the right thing to do. And that difference stayed with him. You realize you changed something. Amelia looked confused. What? How I see people. She remained quiet. Alexander continued. I spent years believing power showed someone's value. A pause. But you proved that character does. The words carried more meaning than he expected. Because Alexander Carter had built an empire based on control. But Amelia showed him something greater. Trust could not be forced. Loyalty could not be purchased. And respect could not be demanded. It had to be earned. The Korean Mafia Boss looked at the woman standing in front of him. The woman everyone overlooked. The woman who had nothing, yet gave him the one thing he needed most. The truth. And for the first time in years, Alexander Carter understood that the strongest person in the room was not always the one with the most power. Sometimes, it was the person brave, enough to protect the truth when nobody else would. The city began to see Alexander Carter differently. But the person who changed him never asked for recognition. She never wanted a reward. She never wanted power. She only wanted the truth to be seen. And that was what made Amelia Brooks different. After Victoria's betrayal was exposed, many people expected Alexander to react with anger. They expected the feared Korean Mafia Boss to seek revenge. They expected punishment, fear, a public downfall. But Alexander did something unexpected. He chose silence. Because he had learned something important. Justice was not about making someone suffer. It was about allowing the truth to speak for itself. The evidence was enough. Victoria's own actions revealed who she really was. The secret meetings. The hidden plans. The betrayal behind the perfect image. And when the truth finally reached the people closest to Alexander, the room went silent. The woman everyone admired was no longer the person they believed her to be. But the woman everyone ignored was the person who had protected him. Amelia continued working at Black Orchid Restaurant. She did not change her behavior. She did not act more important because Alexander knew her value. She still greeted customers. She still helped her coworkers. She still moved through the restaurant with the same quiet confidence. That was what surprised Alexander the most. Many people changed when they gained attention. Amelia did not. Her kindness was not an act. Her humility was not a performance. It was who she had always been. One evening, Alexander returned to the restaurant after closing. The empty room was peaceful. The same place where Amelia had slipped the warning into his hand. The same place where everything began. You saved me, Alexander said quietly. Amelia looked at him. I told you the truth. He nodded. And that saved me. A moment of silence passed. Because Alexander understood the difference. Many people around him protected him because they feared losing his power. Amelia protected him even though she had nothing to gain. That was something he could not forget. You realize most people would have stayed silent, Alexander said. Amelia looked down. Maybe. Why didn't you? She thought for a moment. Because being afraid does not make something wrong become right. Those words stayed with him. Because Alexander had spent years surrounded by people who measured every decision by benefit. But Amelia measured hers by principle. That was rare. Very rare. Later, Marcus Reed spoke with Alexander. You trust her? Alexander looked toward the restaurant. Yes. Marcus nodded. That is not something you give easily. Alexander was quiet. Because he knew. Trust was never built through promises. It was built through actions. And Amelia's actions spoke louder than anything. She risked her safety, her job, her position, to protect someone who had never done anything for her. The Korean Mafia Boss had spent years believing loyalty belonged to the strongest people in the room. But Amelia proved something different. Loyalty belonged to those who stood by the truth, when it was easier to walk away. And for the first time, Alexander Carter understood that the person with the least power could possess the greatest strength. The world knew Alexander Carter as a powerful man, the Korean Mafia boss, the man whose name made others choose their words carefully. But after everything that happened, he began to understand something. Power could protect a person, but only character could reveal who they truly were. Amelia Brooks changed the way Alexander saw loyalty, not through demands, not through influence, but through one simple choice. She told the truth when silence would have been easier. After Victoria's betrayal was exposed, rumors spread throughout the city. People talked about the woman who tried to deceive Alexander. They talked about the evidence. They talked about how close he came to losing everything. But the story that interested people the most was not about Victoria. It was about Amelia, the black waitress who warned the most feared man in the city, the woman who stepped forward despite having nothing to protect her. And Alexander noticed how differently people began looking at her. Before, they saw an employee, someone who served, someone who stayed in the background. Now they saw someone with courage. But Amelia never allowed the attention to change her. She continued working the same way, quietly, humbly, with the same kindness she had always shown. One afternoon, Alexander visited Black Orchid Restaurant. He found Amelia helping a new employee who was struggling. The young woman looked nervous. "I don't think I can do this." Amelia smiled. "You can. But what if I make a mistake?" Amelia gently answered. "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do after." Alexander watched from a distance, because he recognized something important. This was why Amelia was different. She did not help people because they had power. She helped because they were people. Later, Alexander approached her. "You always do that." Amelia looked at him. "Do what?" "Remind people they matter." She smiled. "Someone should." The answer stayed with him, because Alexander had spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from him, people who wanted his protection, his influence, his approval. But Amelia wanted nothing. And somehow, that made her the person he trusted most. "You know," Alexander said, "most people would have used that information to gain something." Amelia looked at him. "Maybe. Why didn't you?" She thought for a moment. "Because helping someone should not come with a price." The silence that followed carried more meaning than words. Alexander understood. That was the difference between loyalty and opportunity. Many people stood beside him because of what he could provide. Amelia stood beside the truth because it was the right thing to do. That evening, Alexander stood outside the restaurant. The city lights reflected against the windows. He thought about the life he had built, the power, the reputation, the people who surrounded him. And then he thought about Amelia, the woman with no title, no influence, no protection. Yet she possessed something many powerful people lacked: courage. For years, Alexander believed strength came from having control over others. But Amelia showed him another kind of strength. The strength to do what was right even when nobody would reward you. The strength to speak when everyone else remained silent. The strength to protect the truth. And that lesson changed him forever. Because the person who saved Alexander Carter was not the person standing closest to his power. It was the person standing closest to the truth. Years later, people would still remember the night Amelia Brooks slipped a small piece of paper into Alexander Carter's hand. Not because of the message itself, but because of what it revealed. A person with no power had protected the person everyone feared. And that changed everything. The city still knew Alexander Carter as the Korean Mafia boss. A man with influence. A man with authority. A man whose name carried weight wherever he went. His yellow-toned skin, tattoos across his neck and body, and intimidating presence still reminded people of the powerful figure he had always been. But those who truly knew his story understood something different. He had changed, not because someone forced him to, not because he lost his power, but because someone showed him what real strength looked like. Amelia continued working at Black Orchid Restaurant. She never asked for a better position. She never demanded recognition. She never used Alexander's respect to gain influence. She remained the same person who had quietly chosen to do the right thing when nobody was watching. And that was exactly why Alexander respected her. One evening, Alexander visited the restaurant after closing. The room was quiet. The lights were softer. The place where everything began felt different now. He looked at the table where Amelia had slipped him the warning. A simple action. A life-changing decision. Amelia walked over. "You are thinking about that night again." Alexander smiled slightly. Yes. Why? He looked around the restaurant. Because I spent years believing loyalty came from power. A pause. But I was wrong. Amelia waited. People stayed close to me because of what I could provide. He looked at her. But you stood beside the truth when you had nothing to gain. Amelia smiled gently. I just did what I thought was right. And that answer was exactly why she was different. She never saw herself as a hero. She never searched for praise. She simply followed her values. Later, Alexander expanded programs that helped employees and communities who had been ignored. Not because he wanted to appear generous. Not because he wanted people to admire him. But because he finally understood what Amelia had always known. Power meant nothing if it could not be used to help others. Marcus Reed noticed the difference. You know what changed the most? Alexander looked at him. What? Before, people respected you because they were afraid. A pause. Now they respect you because they believe in you. Alexander looked toward the city. The difference was clear. Fear could create obedience, but trust created something stronger. One evening, Alexander watched Amelia help a new employee who was struggling. She spoke with patience. She listened carefully. She encouraged someone who felt invisible. And Alexander remembered the first night he met her. He remembered seeing only a waitress. Someone with a lower position. Someone he assumed would never affect his life. But he was wrong. Because Amelia had shown him that value was never determined by a person's title. It was revealed through their choices. The world would always remember Alexander Carter as the Korean Mafia Boss. The powerful man. The feared name. But the people who knew the truth remembered something else. They remembered the Black Waitress who saw betrayal before anyone else. The woman who risked everything to tell the truth. The person who proved that courage does not always come from power. Sometimes, it comes from the quietest person in the room. And in the end, Alexander Carter learned the most important lesson of his life. The person with the least to gain can sometimes be the person who gives you everything you needed to know.